Chapter 12. Reproduction in Plants. Lesson Preview. Modes of reproduction in plants. Asexual reproduction and its types. Kinds of vegetative propagation. Artificial methods of vegetative reproduction. Sexual reproduction. You have already learnt in the previous class that all living things reproduce, that is, they produce young ones of their own kind. The process by which living things produce young ones of their own kind is called reproduction. It is because of reproduction that life continues for an organism from generation to generation. All the systems of living organisms are necessary for life, but the reproductive system is not needed for an organism to live. However, without it no organism can produce young ones and hence cannot propagate its species. Modes of reproduction in plants. We already know that flowers perform the function of reproduction in plants. Flowers change into fruits which contain seeds. Seeds germinate to produce new plants. Thus, flowers are the reproductive part of a plant. The other parts of the plant, i.e. root, stem, leaf are called the vegetative parts of plant. However, plants do not reproduce only from flowers. They reproduce in many other ways. For example, some new plants are produced by bulbs, leaves or tubers. In yeast, the buds grow out of the body of the parent organism. Plants reproduce by the following two methods. 1. Asexual reproduction. 2. Sexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction. In asexual reproduction, only a single parent is involved and plants give rise to new plants without the formation of seeds. There are a number of methods of asexual reproduction in plants. These include budding, fragmentation, spore formation, and vegetative propagation. Types of asexual reproduction. I. Budding. Yeast is a microscopic fungus. It grows and multiplies very fast if sufficient nutrients are made available to it. In yeast, a bulb-like projection is formed on the body of organism known as the bud. The nucleus of the parent body divides into two, one of which goes into the bud. The bud gradually grows and gets detached from the parent body to form a new yeast cell. The new yeast cell matures and produces more yeast cells. At times, the buds do not detach from the body and a chain of yeast cells is formed in a very short time. This is called a colony. Yeast cells require moisture, food, and warmth to grow. Yeast cell. Nucleus. Developing bud. Nucleus. New bud. Nucleus divides. Chain of buds. 2. Fragmentation. Fragmentation is a very common method of reproduction in algae. You must have seen algae in ponds or in stagnant water. They appear as slimy green patches. When food material is available, the body breaks into two or more parts called fragments. Fragmentation is the breaking of a body into two or more parts. Each fragment grows into a new individual. The process continues and they are able to cover a large area in a short time. 3. Spore formation. Some plants like ferns and mosses reproduce asexually through spores. Fungi, bread mold, also reproduce asexually through spores. You must have seen bread mold. If you examine it under the microscope or a magnifying glass, you will see fine thread-like structures called hyphae and spherical structures called sporangia, singular, sporangium. Sporangia are filled with spores which are asexual reproductive bodies, having a thick protective wall. This thick wall enables them to withstand unfavorable conditions such as extreme temperatures, low humidity, lack of food and water. When the sporangium is ripe, it bursts open and spores are released. They float in the air. Under favorable conditions, a spore germinates into a new individual. Hypha. Sporangiophore. Sporangium. Spores. Ferns and mosses also reproduce with the help of spores. 4. Vegetative propagation. In vegetative propagation, new plants are produced from roots, stems, leaves, and buds. These parts are called the vegetative parts of a plant and hence the name vegetative propagation. Advantages of vegetative propagation. Plants take less time to grow. They bear flowers and fruits earlier than those produced from seeds. Only one parent is required. Seedless fruits can be obtained. Exact copies of parent plants can be grown having no variation in features. New varieties with desired qualities can also be produced by this method. Vegetatively propagated plants need less care than ones grown from seeds in early stages of growth. Kinds of vegetative propagation. Stem cuttings. Activity. Take a rose plant. Cut a portion of a branch with a node. Node is a point on the stem or a branch from where leaf grows. This is called a cutting. Put this cutting in moist soil. Water the cutting daily and observe its growth. After a few days, you will notice new roots come out followed by new leaves. Note down the number of days it takes for the roots and leaves to develop. Champa, bougainvillea, sugarcane, money plant, and coleus are grown from their cuttings. Apart from flower buds, there are buds at the point where the leaf joins the node of the stem. These are called vegetative buds which can give rise to new plants. Plants having underground stems, like potatoes, ginger, and turmeric have buds from which new plants grow. In some plants like strawberry and grasses, the main plant develops side shoots which have buds that grow into new plants. Bulbs. Bulbs are underground stems of onion, tulip, and lily, which have thick leaves, whorls. New plants are produced from these bulbs if they are sown. Activity. Take a fresh potato. It is an underground stem called tuber. Observe scars or depressions on it. These are buds called eyes. Cut a few pieces of potato, each having an eye. Sow them in the soil. Water the soil regularly for a few days. What do you observe? Roots and shoots are seen coming out from the eyes. Leaves. Some plants like bryophyllum have buds on the margins of the leaves. Small plants called plantlets develop from these buds. When these plantlets detach off from the main plant and fall on moist soil, they give rise to a new plant. Roots. Plants such as dahlia, sweet potato, and asparagus have swollen roots as they store food. When these swollen roots are put in the soil, they produce new plants. Artificial methods of vegetative reproduction. Since vegetative reproduction has many advantages, several artificial methods have been developed for it. These are commonly used to grow many plants from one plant. Growing new plants by artificial methods is called artificial propagation. Some of these methods are grafting. Grafting is a commonly used method in horticulture to develop new varieties of fruit plants. It is the act of placing a portion of one plant, bud or scion, into or on a stem, root, or branch of another, stalk, in such a way that a union will be formed and the partners will continue to grow. The tissues of scion and stalk join together and form a new single plant in which the stalk supplies the essential nutrients to the scion. New varieties having features of two plants can be developed by grafting. For instance, a high-yielding variety can be grafted to a disease-resistant variety to develop a new variety having qualities of both. Layering. In this, a young branch is bent towards the ground and covered with moist soil. After some time, roots develop from the covered part. This is called a layer. The branch can now be cut and grown into a new plant. This method is called layering. It is used by gardeners to grow plants like jasmine, rose, and bougainvillea. Tissue culture. In this method, a piece of plant tissue is cut off from the growing tip of a plant. The cells are separated and kept in a nutrient medium under controlled conditions. The nutrient medium contains plant hormones which make the cells to divide and form group of cells, and roots also develop. These roots and other cells are then kept in different nutrient medium containing hormones that enable shoots to develop. The different plants can then be grown in pots of soil. Asparagus, chrysanthemums, orchids, etc. are grown by this method. Disadvantages of vegetative propagation. All plants have the undesirable qualities of the parent plant. All plants are vulnerable to the same diseases, whereas in a population of plants produced by seeds, plants have variable features, and hence, only a part of the population may get affected by a specific disease. Germs can be passed from parent to offspring. This does not happen in plants produced from seeds. Sexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction is the most common form of reproduction in plants. The process of reproduction in which new plants are obtained from seeds is called sexual reproduction. It is the most common form of reproduction in plants. We have already learnt that flower is the reproductive part of a plant. Stamen is the male reproductive part, and pistil is the female reproductive part. Activity. Take a large flower China rose, mustard or petunia. Separate the parts of the flower sepals, petals, stamens, and pistils. Study the various parts of a stamen and a pistil. Most flowers have both stamens and pistils. Such flowers are called bisexual flowers. Examples of such flowers are mustard, pea, rose, sunflower, petunia, and China rose. Some flowers contain only the stamens or the pistils. Such flowers are called unisexual flowers. Some examples are cucumber, papaya, mulberry, corn, and date palm. In plants, the male and female flowers may be present in the same plant or in different plants. Anthers, pollen tube, stigma, style, ovules, ovary, stem, pistil, anther, filament, stigma, style, ovary, ovules. Stamen bears anthers and filament. An anther contains pollen grains which produce the male gamete, sperm. A pistil consists of stigma, style, and ovary. Ovary has one or more ovules. Ovules contain the female gamete or egg cell, ovum. In sexual reproduction, male and female gametes unite to form a zygote. The main steps involved in sexual reproduction in plants are pollination, fertilization, formation of fruit and seeds, seed dispersal, pollination, the transfer of pollen grains from the anther of the stamen to the stigma of the pistil by air, water, insects, etc., is called pollination. Insects visit the flower and carry away pollens on their bodies. If the pollen lands on the stigma of the same flower, it is called self-pollination. When the pollen of a flower lands on the stigma of another flower of the same plant, or that of a different plant of the same kind, it is called cross-pollination. Self-pollination, cross-pollination, stigma, anther, transfer of pollens, stigma, anther. The transfer of pollen grains to the stigma of a flower takes place with the help of wind, water or insects. These are called the agents of pollination. Fertilization. After pollination, male gamete unites with a female gamete to form a zygote. The process of fusion of male and female gametes to form a zygote is called fertilization. The zygote develops into an embryo. Formation of fruit and seeds. After fertilization, the ovary increases in size and forms the fruit. The ovules become the seeds. The sepals, petals, and other parts of the flower fall off. The fruit is the seed-bearing part or the ripened ovary of the flowering plant. Seed contains an embryo which is covered in a protective coat. This embryo gives rise to a new plant. Fruits are of two types: fleshy and juicy, such as apples, mangoes, peaches, oranges, etc. Hard, such as almonds, walnuts, etc. Seed dispersal. You must have wondered how same kinds of plants are found in different places. This is possible because of seed dispersal. The process by which seeds are scattered to different places is known as seed dispersal. If the seeds of all the plants fall at the same place and grow, there would be hundreds of new plants growing close together. They would compete with each other for light, water, and minerals. Many would not be able to survive the tough competition, and would die. Seed dispersal prevents this overcrowding, and helps plants to invade new habitats. Seed dispersal is carried out by agents such as wind, water, and animals. Wind. Seeds of some plants like grass are very light. Winged seeds such as those of drumstick and maple, and hairy seeds of madar and sunflower are carried by the wind to far-off places. Seeds of drumstick, maple, seed, sunflower, hairy fruit, madar, hairy seed, water. Seeds and fruits of some plants have structures which enable them to float in water. Fruits of plants like water lily, coconut or palm float in water. They are able to float because of a spongy or fibrous outer coat. Their seeds are carried to far-off places by water. Coconut, water lily, lotus. Animals. Some seeds and fruits have hooks, barbs, spines, or bristles which stick on the skin or fur of animals or clothes of humans, and are carried to far-off places. Examples are xanthium, tribulus, and urena. Xanthium, tribulus, urena. Explosion. In some plants like balsam, castor seeds, peas, and bean plant, the fruit bursts with a sudden jerk, and the seeds are scattered away from the parent plant.